Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Barron, and welcome to today's case study. I'm really excited to talk to Amy Jolly. She's had a really interesting career and is now the head at Applewild School in Massachusetts. Amy, welcome to the case study, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's fun to be here.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a good time because you've got a good story to tell, and I'm excited to share it with folks. Before we get started, though, can you talk a little bit about like Applewild, the type of school it is, where you're located, all that sort of stuff?
We're located in central Massachusetts, just far enough away from Boston so that we're not in the fancy part of Massachusetts. It's an old mill town, lots of old factories that were victim to globalization. So the town is gentrifying, but it's not there yet. So it's a very interesting, from a socioeconomic perspective, place to have an independent school.
Yeah, and I think, when you arrived and got to work, I mean, you had some specific mandates, right? Like what was the challenge that you faced when you arrived on campus? And what year did you start again?
2019, just right before the pandemic.
Yeah, can you imagine being a head? Like the last case study I did, the head arrived in just the same time you did. I mean, that's just incredible timing. And I'm sure that's part of the story, but talk about what, you needed to accomplish when you got there.
Sure. The school had been through a failed headship when they brought me in. They'd hired someone who hadn't worked out. Enrollment was down, and I think there was the school is a beloved community institution. It's well regarded as really an important part of the local economic landscape for generating intellectual capital. Important on a number of levels. But when I came on board, there had been an initial strategic plan to try to right the ship, and the direction I was given was run with that and and make the numbers work.
And so what happened?
Well, we did everything a little different here at Applewild than maybe the NAS playbook would say. So I overlapped with the interim head, who had been the previous long-serving head, wonderful man who really knew the school. He had his hand on the rudder when I first came on board, and that gave me an opportunity to really do some market research. And a couple of things sort of just jumped out as opportunities for us at the school. We had a significant problem, and continue to have a problem with unfunded financial aid. We make lots of opportunity for local youth, and super proud of that, but we struggle to pay for it. Our other challenge that we're up against is sort of deferred maintenance on physical plant and on faculty salaries. So those were the challenges when I walked in the door, but doing a market study, doing a SWOT analysis, really came clear what cards I had to play.
And when you say market study, like what did that mean? Like how did you approach that sort of a project?
Well, I kind of looked at what resources I had, what cards were dealt this school. It's all well and good to want to sell a planetarium program, but if you don't have a planetarium, you can't sell it, right? So, we have 28 gorgeous acres here, 11 buildings, beautiful facilities, and it just got me thinking, what are the possibilities?
What did you find?
Well, a couple things. The school had been doing a homestay program for many, many years, and we had a line of students out the door who wanted to attend our school for whom we could not find homestays for. We had a preschool program, sort of the same situation. The previous head had the genius idea to absorb a preschool that was being shut down at a hospital up the street. But we hadn't grown it, right? And there was a line out the door of demand there, but we just kind of couldn't figure out how to grow it. And then there was some work we needed to do on just the kinds of, academic programs we were offering our students. So those were sort of three major areas that we dug into right away.
Yeah, so let's go through each. So talk about the homestay program. So when you say homestay program, were these kids from overseas who were coming to study at Applewild,
Yeah.
or were they domestic kids as well?
It was overseas kids, and the school had been doing this for, like 20 years. So we had an ELL program firmly in place. We have a school nurse, beautiful dining hall. And it just became really clear that we didn't have, we were boarding school without a dorm, is what became clear to me. So we had the benefit of having an old mansion that had been converted into apartments for faculty. And, which was great because that also helps recruit faculty. But we were, with very short money, able to convert that into a 16-bed dorm. We spent a lot of time looking at best practice for boarding young students because we boarded them between grades 4 and 9.
Right.
We consulted experts in it, and we built out a nice little program, and then the pandemic hit.
Right. What happened? So what did you do?
Well, that first year we recruited 12 kids, and even with the pandemic, we had 9 that came to us. And actually,
Wow.
that's one of those cases where the pandemic was a gift, because I think people were just so happy to have their children safe and happy and learning in person that, any little missteps we might have made were under the cover of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was actually a good time to start the program, and we retained 100% of those kids.
What was the board thinking at the time as you were starting to roll out this new program, shifting from homestay to actually having a residential program on campus?
Well, my first board meeting in July of my very first year, before all this happened, I went to the board and I said, I want to launch a junior boarding program. I want to launch a school within a school for children with language-based learning disabilities. We want to grow our satellite location, and I have some other ideas for a program. I want to bring back the 9th grade. And I remember a trustee in that first meeting raising his hand and saying, gosh, is all that going to work? And I laughed, and I was like, no, not all of it's going to work, but we're gonna try. We have reasonable data that suggests it might work, right? And there's no way to be for sure because you won't know until you do it. So we did roll out junior boarding, but we also rolled out this thing called Prospect Studio, which Applewild had a 9th grade for many, many years, and then dropped it back in the last economic contraction. And so I wanted to bring it back so that we could be a true junior boarding school, because you have to have a 9th grade as a junior boarding school. But I wanted to do it in a creative way that was relevant and progressive and, importantly, fiscally responsible. So we came up with this program. It was like a little program within a program, very small cohort that first year, project-driven, thematic, and the kids had a great time. The teacher delivered the goods, and we learned that we could offer a 9th grade program in a creative way. So I think that's one of the things we did during the pandemic, in addition to junior boarding, to pull it off. But back to that first board meeting, I had inherited a board that had been through some really hard times with the school and really loved this place and continue to really love it. And they are in a position where they're capable of being nimble, and they're capable of being open-minded about things. So, if we have to change something, our board is wonderful in saying, they'll wax nostalgic for a moment. Oh, I remember when this or that happened. And then they'll say, but what you're saying now sounds good too, and let's try it. And I think that's, if you could have anything in a board, it's to have people who have your back for these things, and also who understand that, not all of it's going to work. So what I learned with that Prospect Studio was, actually, as a standalone, it didn't work. But what we did learn was we loved what it did for the students. So we took what we loved about that, and we brought it into our main program, and it's just continued to grow.
What I'm hearing, and I want to keep pulling the thread on the boarding program, because I know that's a big part of your future at Applewild. But what I'm hearing so far is there's a real iterative mindset at the school. Starting with yourself up to the board. Is that also is that something that you've had to kind of culturally introduce? With the staff and faculty, because that's different, right? Having an iterative mindset. How did you go about approaching that?
So it wasn't easy. When I came on board, there were, I want to say, 7 or 8 people or near retirement age that were planning on rolling off. There were several long-serving people who loved the school, but maybe, loved what it was. And I think, we got around that by restructuring the admin team. That was when we first
making hard choices.
Yeah, I had to make some hard choices with that, and I offered people new positions. Some chose them and some did not. And we also engaged in a process of redoing our schedule because, what you spend time on is what you value. And that was a wonderful introspective project for us to go through that ultimately allowed us to really raise our game programmatically. And that had a way of either pulling people more firmly inside the tent, leaning into this iterative model, or, deciding that another place would be a good option. Ultimately, I think, I lead in a way that values imperfection. And also, we ask our kids to take all these intellectual risks every day, and that it's okay to make a mistake. And then with adults, we want to smack them down when something doesn't work. And actually, you have to be really careful about that in our schools. Is some of it doesn't work, and you just have to plan for it. And it's not predictable which part's not going to work because environments in the macro culture change.
Right. Well, and you have to be. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my take on this is like you have to be willing to take risks. But if the risks don't pan out, you have to learn from them, and iterate from there. So it's this constant evolution. But like, how are you assessing what's working and what's not? Because that's a big component of it as well.
No, absolutely. Honestly, it's the money. Like, is it generating the revenue? Because we are a tuition dependent school. So we can't afford something that isn't financially viable. We recently had to recalibrate our satellite location to go from offering some grade school grades to only being a preschool, which was hard, but also easy in a way that wasn't doing what we thought it would do. So we've made a change.
And this is the board's like supporting you, saying this is the way we need to lead moving forward.
Yeah, they're really clear that they expect me to make hard decisions, and I meet weekly with our board chair, and we have a wonderful collaborative relationship. But I also have, I think, a really great relationship with the rest of the board. And when something comes up, like, hey, I need to recalibrate the grades at the satellite, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal, right?
I will communicate what I'm up against in a very transparent way. I don't spend a lot of mental energy trying to make something look good. I just make it look like it is.
And now a word from our sponsor. Leading a school today can mean juggling a dozen different systems across offices, finance, fundraising, marketing, enrollment, and academics, all pulling your attention in different directions. At Blackbaud, we believe it shouldn't be that way. That's why we built Blackbaud's Total School Solution. It's a fully connected solution designed for private and independent school leaders who want a clear view of their entire operation. From tuition to transcript to donation, you get one ecosystem, one login, and one source of truth. This isn't about more software. It's about smarter strategy. When your systems work together, you spend less time chasing down data and more time leading. Want to see what Blackbaud's Total School Solution could do for your school? Visit blackbaud.com. That's BLACKBAUD.com to learn more.
Hey, let's go back to the boarding program for a second. So, you launch a program, the pandemic happens, you had 12 down to 9. Families were really grateful to actually have a place where their kids could go and be kids, right? Like that's really powerful. So what happened after that? Like, bring me up to where we are today, because I know there's some really cool stuff associated with it.
Yeah. So we are, so that was so successful, and we filled it the next year, the first dorm. We also had this old Victorian house that had been sitting empty on our campus. And really, it was either knock it down for $50,000, which I was loath to do, from a sustainability perspective. Plus, it was just this beautiful old house. Or we could spend a bit of money, finance it, and create a new dorm. And so we did that. And last year we opened it in October. So we now have 2 dorms. We have 30 beds total. And starting this fall, we are fully enrolled with 30 students.
And so what has that done for the bottom line? I mean, because you said like one of the things that tells you whether a program is successful or not is the revenue that it generates. Like, how's that working?
Sure. So the combined efforts of our new 9th grade program, junior boarding, expanding our preschool, implementing a language-based program within the school, and then upping our game curricular-wise, is we've doubled revenue in 4 years.
Wow. And that's, and a large part of that is due to the, those 4 or 5 drivers.
Yes, it's all of it's due to that.
All of it's due to that. And I want to ask a couple questions about some of those other drivers in a second, but like what I'm hearing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when you were looking at your program, you weren't looking to say, hey, let's like start these new things that maybe are a little adjacent to who we are as a school. You were actually looking at, what do we currently have? Like what's already here, and are there ways for us to optimize it to grow and meet the needs of the school? Is that a fair assessment?
Yep, sure. Every school has things it's good at, right? And things it's not.
Right.
And, for us, for example, for our foundations program, which is for children with moderate to severe dyslexia, we had been offering a program for kids. And I think we just looked at each other and we said, there's a need for this in our market. We're already doing this well. Let's just amplify it and see where it goes. And let us do an even better job with the kids we're serving. The same is true for our preschool program. We had 20 children pre-pandemic, under 5, and now we have 90 this fall.
Wow. And what does that mean from a staffing point of view? Like, have you had to, like, how does that work?
Yeah. Well, heading into the pandemic that first year, I did cut about $1 million in operational costs. And what we've done is we've brought back a lot of that cost, but in different ways. Like, so preschool teachers, Orton Gillingham tutors, residential life staff. We don't offer Latin anymore, but we do all these other things.
Right. So when you say you don't offer Latin anymore, it makes me wonder about like the programs that you did have to cut. Like how did you introduce that to the community, and like what was the feedback that you got? I mean, I imagine for some that must have been challenging.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think there's a romantic notion around Latin, but we're a junior school. Yeah, it might feel a little differently if we were a high school. There was a little bit of element of luck there. The individual that was teaching it got ready to retire. Again, back to numbers. When I boiled it down, there were only like 7 kids taking Latin, so it was pretty easy. Even though it's romantic to say or prestigious to say you offer Latin. Educationally, offering Spanish accomplishes what we need to do as a junior school. So, I mean, I didn't really process that one that much. It was a pretty easy decision.
Were there other programs that you had to sunset that maybe were a little more challenging?
So when I came on board, we had a dining program that was included in tuition and free. And we were losing our shirts on it. And the food wasn't very good. And so we're giving everyone free mac and cheese, but our teachers hadn't received pay increases. Like it was not great. So that was one of those advantages of the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, we got to cut this. So I cut it. And then we've slowly brought it back. And now we brought it back as a mandatory fee.
Got it.
And that took a couple of years to kind of edge our way back to it. But, it's a lot more financially sustainable now.
So you said you have a satellite program, right, and a different campus, and that you had to make some decisions about that. First off, like talk a little bit about that satellite program and ultimately like how you had to reconfigure it this last year.
My predecessor started it. It's about 15 miles away right off of a major commuter highway in an office park. I mean, it's literally in an office building. And the thought there was, given our location, if we could attract people with young children who maybe don't want to drive far, they would come to this and spend a couple of years with us and then be willing to send their children on a bus, or even, at that point they're a little older and they need a bigger campus. They would be ready to go. We grew it all the way through fourth grade last year, and I didn't like it for fourth grade in an office building. We couldn't offer the quality of the program I wanted. And it also attracted not the clientele we thought. So, under the big category of I hate it when that happens, we sort of built a competitor to ourselves. So many of those grade school children were from the catchment area that our school pulls from. So, was it pulling children from further east? No, it was pulling it from our catchment area. Were those children willing to matriculate to the main campus? No, because they chose a school in an office park.
Right.
So it didn't work the way we expected. So, if I had deeper pockets or more resources to throw at it, maybe I could get it to work over time. But we have a lot of other priorities here that are really working very clearly. So, there's a huge market for preschool services. From the pandemic here locally, 30% of childcare providers went under. So there's a ton of demand. So we're pivoting. We're just becoming a bigger preschool at the satellite location.
So the independent school business model is challenged, right? Like it's a very difficult financial model to make work year over year. You're dialing things in, you're pulling levers, like you're optimizing your campus to, hopefully like stave off, any future trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you feel about where you are today, and where do you think you need to go tomorrow?
Yeah, so we've gotten the school to where, we're not pulling from our endowment any longer. Like we are, it's in the black. Now, is it vibrant yet? Is it strong enough to weather storms? Is it the kind of school? No is the answer, right? So we are being heartened by our successes in these initiatives. We are actually boldly moving forward with additional initiatives. That's because I want a school that is vibrant, and that is I don't living paycheck to paycheck's not the way to be, right? So we have a number of things that we're doing. We will be expanding our boarding program because we are offering a very high quality program there that's well received by the market. We plan to expand. Now that we have residential capacity, we have a day camp. Now we want to have a residential camp. We're adding a ski academy. We added an equestrian program here this fall, not by buying horses, but by contracting it out.
Right, sure.
But these last two things, we're leveraging resources of the community to do.
Yeah. And what strikes me is that, you're in 4 years, you've been able to grow the school significantly. And I wonder, like, does that build, obviously it builds your confidence, it builds the board's confidence, but like, what does that do for the community at large? Like, they may not necessarily be thinking about like these different initiatives that you're running per se around, financial viability and all that sort of stuff. But like, what are you feeling? Like, is there something that's emerging?
We're attracting really high quality faculty because of it. I think that's one of the unexpected but amazing dividends for this. I think our faculty is really energized. Our board is really excited too. It's almost like you're reading that book that you're dying to see how the story ends.
Yeah.
So we're
awesome.
both flipping pages together. And that's really fun. I think the area that is so interesting from just a cultural perspective is, we've changed the enrollment significantly, going from 28 preschoolers to 90, and then going all the way down to, to toddlers. That's new for us.
And rolling out ninth grade, right?
And bringing back a ninth grade and increasing, kids from across the country and around the world. It's our day population is really just in the beginning parts of understanding what an amazing opportunity this is for their children. And I do have parents that have pulled me aside and have said, I think it's great that my kid has a
That's
kid
awesome.
from Tokyo in their class or from Florida or whatever. Or I'm so glad I can send my toddler to Applewild along with my kindergartner. Like they couldn't do that a couple years ago. So, I think that's the fun part that we're really thinking a lot about, and how to help families, after a pandemic, reconnect with the school. And we're thinking a lot about, what do families need from school besides the education? Like, what's that community piece look like?
Well, Amy, you've done a lot of hard work in the last 4+ years. Now you're heading into your 5th year of being ahead, right? At Applewild. If a school, watches this and they're like, wow, it's inspiring, right? Like, I think there are things that we can do on our campus, but maybe they're just not sure, like, where do I start? Because, if you think about it, you have like multiple initiatives running in parallel. You've got a lot going on. And, it takes time to build up to that sort of a level of execution. So if they called you and said, Amy, where do I start? Like, help me out here. Like, what advice would you give?
I would say find something that, I would say be a little fearless, maybe. So our preschool didn't grow for many years because we put it in the basement of our oldest building. And we wondered why no one came to kindergarten from it. And, EASNY came in, our accrediting body came in and said, that's kind of not okay. And even then, the school kind of pushed back on that. We're not really in the preschool business, You have to be willing to sort of challenge some of those ideas you have about yourself. And I think once you do, like, there's nothing out of mission for us to serve toddlers. There's not, like, our core values and the things that we value as a community about raising kids and educating kids. It's totally aligned, right? It was just this idea we had. So I think that can be hard in independent schools. And using preschool as another example, it's a pretty easy thing to do because it's contained and we could try something. And you could tell people that you're going to have, like, I didn't go to 90 overnight. We've added, classroom each year, as demand supported it. And we provided training and the space and everything that they need. But for things that didn't work, we talk about that pretty openly too, about, that one didn't work, but this is the direction we're going to go.
Yeah. Do you remember, Proctor Academy? They used to have a blog, it was called Chuck's Corner.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm dating myself for sure, but I think it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. I actually did a podcast series that I hosted a long time ago. I had a chance to sit down with Chuck and talk about, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because it's just completely different and unique, and why is it so successful? So he really, like, dialed in on the success piece to talk about, part of what made that successful was that we not only told the good, but we also shared the bad. So, like, he talked about, they had, like, the flu ravaged campus. Like, everybody got it. It was bad, and school had to shut down, like, all that stuff. And but that was a really important part of Proctor's story in that moment. So they shared it and they talked about it. And he said, Peter, if you don't look at the things that aren't working on campus, or the things that are failing on campus, whatever it may be, then, people are less likely to believe you when you're talking about the good.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a lot about what you're talking here. It's like, yeah, you're having successes across the board, but along the way, the success that you're having now is probably informed by a lot of failure, that led up to that final place. Right. And I think that's an important mindset.
And just back to playing the cards we're dealt, nothing that we've done has been like a crazy different thing. Every single new initiative had its roots in something that was already happening on campus. Even the boarding piece, if I look back in the school's history, back in the very beginning, we had a small group of, I think, Italian students that would come in the winter and ski and then take classes. So these things are part of our school. It's just identifying where there's an opportunity to generate both the programmatic excitement and the revenue needed to support the rest of it. And the cumulative effect is that all of it's risen.
I said this. I think I said that was my last question. I do have one more. You've got an interesting background. Like you actually worked. Was it management consulting before you got into education?
Yeah.
How has that helped you?
Yeah, I loved working in the corporate world in management consulting, and that's all about solving problems, right? And I briefly retired to try to be at home with my kids, and promptly lost it, and needed an outlet. And at the time, my kids were going through the independent school admissions process, and I kept watching directors, and I was like, "That's a lot like the recruiting we do." And it just felt like a thing I could do to get in, to get in the door. And I was able to weasel my way into a job at a school that was really struggling. And because it was struggling, I learned a lot doing that. And the lessons, the project management and business analyst stuff that I had from early in my career paid off. But I come from a long line of educators. So when I had kids and I ended up going into admissions, one thing we get to change the world every day. Like we make a difference every day. And, I think that's why we all get up. And so I came to headship after serving as a director of admission and financial aid for many years. And I love it. There's a lot of overlap in what you get in admissions to being a head.
That's awesome. Well, Amy Jolly, thank you so much for sharing Applewild's story. This has been great. And, me sitting here, I can't wait to continue to watch you grow the school and just make it that vibrant place that you know it's going to be.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to serve our community.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Amy.